Hey everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to the channel. Today I am answering your Disney Cruise Line questions. You guys were great to submit a whole bunch specifically about my cruise in Europe that I just got back from. An amazing trip with my friend Adam. You had some great questions and I can't wait to get right into it. Y'all's questions really revolved around a few things, but the same questions kept getting asked over and over again, which usually is a pretty good sign that if 5 people submitted the same question, probably about 105 people out there watching this video have that question too. So I feel good about the questions that I've chosen, and I hope that if you're planning a European cruise with any cruise line, and particularly if you're curious about European cruising with Disney, that you find this video super helpful. So first of all, if you're new from Adam's channel and you headed over here, thank you so much. It is such an honor to have you. Adam is such a great friend, and I'm finding out from you guys, you're really great viewers. So it's really just an honor to have you over here as part of my community as well. Now, this trip was 7 nights. We sailed out of Rome, and then we were in Naples, Mykonos, Santorini, and Hania. I did 4 excursions. I had an excursion in every port of call. I sailed in the day before. It was a nonstop overnight flight from Atlanta to Rome. I stayed at the Hilton at the Rome airport, took Disney transportation from the Rome airport out to the port, and then same way on the way back. And I actually left to come back home to Atlanta the day that we got off of the ship. The trip exceeded my expectations in every way. If you haven't watched the vlogs yet, make sure you go and do so. But let's start answering some questions. The very first one, this was asked by a lot of you. Can Disney cruises be done on a budget? Adam talks about money briefly in his vlog. Shocking. So Disney cruises are expensive, and Disney cruises in Europe are very expensive. Cruising in Europe is expensive no matter what. It's just part of what it is. It's a lot for the cruise ships to operate over there. If you're flying from the US, you're talking a lot of expense for that. I was able to get a guaranteed veranda rate, which is called a VGT. If you are looking to find good fares, what I would recommend, and I'm going to put a little screen recording I did here so you can find out where they are. Go to special offers. That's one place you can find them, but also go straight to the itinerary that you're looking for. I lucked out in that when I went to book, which was only about 90 days before we sailed, there were VGT fares available. So I saved a tremendous amount of money, but all in for me, cruise and airfare still ran me about $7,000. Now, Disney Cruise Line does not offer a single supplement. Some cruise lines do, so you don't get a discount for sailing by yourself. So if Scott had come with me, it also would have been $5,000. This is not something I can do regularly. This was a once in a lifetime thing for me. It was such an amazing experience. I'm so glad I said yes when Adam called, but just know it is going to cost a lot of money. Worth it is such a difficult thing to talk about because what's worth it to one person may not be worth it to somebody else. For me, it was 100% worth it, and I'm so glad that I took the plunge and that I did it. One of you asked, how far in advance do you suggest flying in? I am so scared of delays. So back in the day, I would have said day in advance was plenty early, but I will tell you, my husband is in the airline industry and he's been flying for over 25 years. I have never seen delays for everything from weather to equipment to staffing issues like I am seeing right now. So I would actually say fly in 2 days before. It worked out fine for me flying in the day before, and I think for domestic, if you're within the US for cruises, that's still totally fine. But there are only a couple of flights a day that go to these European destinations. So in hindsight, I wish I had gone out 2 days before. That also would have helped me with the next biggest question that I got, which was jet lag. So many of you had questions about jet lag. But here's why I'm not a great person to talk about that. I don't really get jet lag that bad, knock wood. I just don't. Even when we went to Japan, which that was another great trip if you want to check out that vlog series now that you're done watching all of these, I just adjust pretty quickly to different time zones. Now, also it helps that I sleep really well on airplanes. I had an overnight flight. I slept 6 hours, and my dad, who was a veteran international flyer, flew all over the world for work. He always used to say, we're not going to look at what the time is at home. You just kind of have to embrace the mindset of the destination and just let it go. There's lots of tips and tricks on the internet for how to deal with jet lag if that's something that's a big concern for you. But if you want to get the most out of your cruise and you are someone that has a lot of problems with jet lag, certainly if you're traveling with kids, you may want to come in 2 or 3 days in advance just to give your body a fighting chance to adapt. Someone else asked, my kids are 8 and 10. What is a good age to take kids on a European cruise? I actually think for a kid's first trip to Europe, cruising is such a fantastic idea because they're going to sleep in the same bed every night. They're going to sleep surrounded by characters they're familiar with. They're going to have food they're familiar with. Everybody on the ship is obviously going to speak English, and it makes it really round and approachable. Having said that, I probably wouldn't tackle something like this with preschoolers, at least not for me. I had 3 kids in 3 years, and the thought of taking those 3 kids on a cruise anytime before maybe 2nd or 3rd grade just boggles my mind, at least not in Europe. They do have, of course, all of the same daycare and all of those things that are available when the ships are in the US. But since the whole point is the excursions, I would not personally want to get off the ship in a European port with my children on board. That would just feel very strange to me. So I would definitely wait until they were elementary age and they could really understand what they were seeing, but then they would still have the benefit of all of the comforts of home by being on a Disney cruise ship. So I think that 8 and 10 is a fantastic age to do this trip. Differences between embarkation, debarkation outside of the US. The only real difference, because getting on the ship was exactly the same, the only real difference I noticed is when we got off the ship, we didn't have to go through passport control or customs, and that's because we sailed out of the EU and we returned to the EU. So there was nothing for us to do. So that was kind of weird because we got off the ship and we just walked off. Of course, I did have to go through passport control leaving Rome, and then again coming into the US, I had to go through customs. But it was way easier to get off the ship in Rome than it is, say, in Port Canaveral, which was not what I was expecting. That was very different than what I thought would happen. So yeah. Choosing between a European cruise versus one that leaves from the US, pros and cons. I would say if you're not interested in seeing Europe, there's no reason to take a European cruise unless you're already over there. There were a few families, and I thought this was really interesting, that are stationed overseas that took their kids on the cruise to just give them a little bit of a taste of home. And I thought that was really great. They didn't necessarily do all the excursions because a lot of them have been to those destinations before. But if you're just looking for like a nice, relaxing resort vacation, this is not it because you're doing lots of ports of call, lots of excursions, very busy days. So definitely I would say the US destinations are far more of that resort vibe. We did get 2 days at sea, which was lovely. So it wasn't that it wasn't relaxing at all, but between the travel and everything else, they're 2 very different things. So I would say if you want to see Europe, Disney Cruise Line is a great way to do that if you want just kind of like that tasting menu experience. If you want a relaxing cruise, I would not do the European cruises. I think you can do that a lot more cost effectively on the US sailings. Are the excursions worth the price? For me, 100% they were worth the price. The excursions that I did, if you have this trip coming up, they are still, as far as I know, called the same thing. Let's see if I can get this right. We did the adults only half-day Pompeii. Pro tip there, if you're going in the summer months, do the first visit of the day. It was far less crowded. We did have to get off the ship very early, but it was also much cooler. Definitely worth it. I think we had a far better experience than people that went later in the day when it was much more crowded and a lot hotter. Okay. I did the Taste of Mykonos, which was a wine tasting. We visited a creamery. It was just incredible. I also did the Hidden Villages of Santorini, which that was probably the one that I would recommend. Well, it's tied between that one and the next one I'm going to talk about, but that was so great because Santorini can be very busy, and we were able to go off the beaten path, see beautiful churches, historic like cave houses, learn about the history of Santorini. Absolute perfection, 2 thumbs way up. And then I did I think it was the wine and culture of Hanya. And this one was very long. It was a 7-hour excursion, worth every penny. That one was the most expensive at $106, but we had a meal, we had snacks, we had several wine tastings, we had lots of wine, great guides, great history, was definitely worth the money. I felt all the excursions were very well done. One note on excursions, you want to make sure you take euros to tip your both your driver and the tour guide. So just be prepared for that. Yeah, so make sure you're prepared to give them tips. And yeah, totally worth it. Definitely glad I did the ones that I did. Research your excursions ahead of time. There is a lot of information on the Disney Cruise Line website. You can kind of hunt around the internet and find different reviews. But if it just really depends on what you're interested in. There were a lot of like beach type excursions, especially in Greece. I was not interested in that because I can go to the beach anywhere. I wanted to do history and culture and how do they make olive oil and all of those kinds of things. And that is exactly what I got. Book your excursions as soon as you can. But if the excursion you really want is sold out, don't lose heart. Keep checking back. People cancel all the time, even up to once we were on the ship, a few openings came available. So just keep in mind what you really want to do and keep trying to get those great excursions because they were just divine. I would also say for me, and the exception to this would have been ironically the one I liked the most, which was the Hania one. I did the smaller excursions, and it will say on there if it's a big group or if it's smaller. I just like the ones that are more like groups of 15 or 20 instead of groups of 30 or 60 or whatever. It just felt a lot more intimate to me. I learned more, and the guides were so amazingly knowledgeable, and it was really fun to be able to chat with them one-on-one. Antonio in Pompeii, I will remember for the rest of my life. Reina in Santorini, just really good people that had so much knowledge to share, and you could tell they were really passionate about their home, and I love that. General question: how do the envelopes for your servers work at the end of the cruise? The night before your last full day, they will put the envelopes in your room. The envelopes really are just for you to tear off and hand to the various people to say thank you. The automatic gratuities are going to happen even if you don't do anything with the envelopes. I always add additional gratuity. I know Adam does as well. I actually asked our stateroom attendant, are US dollars okay or do you guys want euros? He said since the Dream in particular is also going to be in the US very soon, that either one is fine. I did do it in euros. I think that's probably a little more considerate because maybe not all of the crew are headed with the ship back to the US. But I always add additional. And in the past, I've had some of you say, well, the cruise line should pay more. Yes, 100% the cruise line should pay them more, but we have to operate within the reality that we're part of, and they don't pay more. So I'm going to make sure that those people understand how much I appreciated them, and that's just something I budget for before I ever book a trip. Speaking of which, when it comes to budgeting, keep in mind that Disney does nickel and dime you a little bit. They don't have a drinks package. And as you saw, if you watched the vlogs, I like my evening cocktail and I usually had a glass of wine with dinner. So that's all additional. All your specialty coffees are going to be additional. Your fine dining in Palo and Remy is all going to be additional. The rainforest room is going to be additional. I almost always do the length of stay pass for the rainforest room, and I was so happy that I did it this time. It is a great little place to just get away. Many times I was one of the only people in there. It was never crowded. And on the sea days, the adult areas were so packed, you guys. I cannot even explain it. So it was great to have the rainforest room to go to. You do the little circuit with the different steam rooms. I wish they had the ice room on the Dream. They don't. They have it on the Wish. But it is a great option, but it's extra money. Your spa treatments are extra money. If you get a smoothie, it's extra money. The ice cream shop on board is extra money. And there's plenty of ways to do it and not spend all that extra money because, yes, you can get, all your food is included in the main restaurants. You can, of course, get the free ice cream from the soft serve. You don't have to get the specialty ice cream. You don't have to get the specialty smoothies. But yeah, if you like some of those types of things, just make sure you budget for it, because everything is worth it if it's worth it to you. What can be daunting and awful, though, is if you get on a cruise ship thinking you've paid all the money you're going to pay, and then you get off the ship and you have a $1,000 or a $1,200 bill. That's not fun. Nobody wants to be surprised by that at the end of their cruise. So just make sure you're aware of what's included and what's not before you ever get on the cruise ship. Would you recommend a European cruise for a couple's first trip to Europe? I 100% would, and here's why. In case you're someone who's a little nervous about traveling to Europe, if you're nervous about, the language barrier and all those kinds of things, this is a fantastic way to make all of it just feel a lot more comfortable. It's, as I said, very round and approachable. That's why I think it's great for elementary school kids. I think it's great for retired people. And I think it's great for couples if this is their first time in Europe, because it is that tasting menu. It gives you a little sampling of a bunch of different destinations so you can decide for yourself where you want to go back to. I don't know when, if ever, I will be back in some of these places. I will be back in Greece, in fact, at the end of September with my husband. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so that you're here for all of those vlogs. And actually, that trip with him was scheduled before I scheduled the cruise with Adam. And I think that's the only reason Scott wasn't stomping his feet, which he wouldn't do anyway, but he was okay with it because he knew we were going to Greece very, very soon after I got back. But if you're not someone who's traveled in Europe a lot and you just want to kind of get a sense of what it's like, this is a great way to do that. And then you can always come back if you're fortunate enough to do so at a later date and explore more. It is expensive and it is a big trip. It's a lot. I was exhausted for a solid week after I got home. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of new. Your brain is taking in so much information. I was so grateful for the 2 days at sea to actually kind of decompress a little and think about everything that I've seen. And if I'm going to be honest, I still haven't processed all that. It was just so much in all of the best ways. I'll end with this last question, which is, do you have any more adventures with Adam planned? You're both great. Well, first of all, thank you. And not yet, but I promise that we will, because we traveled great together. We had a ball, and I definitely think future Jen and Adam adventures are coming soon, and I'll let you know when that's going to happen. In the meantime, I'm actually leaving for my next adventure a week from Sunday. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, but the vlogs from that trip should start in about 2 weeks' time. And if you're looking for more content from me in the meantime, head on over to my lifestyle channel where I have packing tips, travel tips, home organization tips, all kinds of other things are over there, and I would love to see you. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a big thumbs up, and whatever you're doing today, I hope you're being really good to each other. And I'll see you next time. Bye!